My ex's new wife hit our teenage son across the face because he forgot to do dishes while studying for a test, so I confronted her and things got physical. Now ex claims I'm manipulating our son, even though he refuses to go back to their house. Hi Reddit, this whole mess started about 2 weeks ago. I, 34F, need to write this down because people keep telling me I overreacted, but I don't think I did. My ex, James, 35M, and I have a son together named Tyler, who just turned 15. James and I dated in high school, and I got pregnant senior year. We tried to make it work for about a year after graduation, but it just didn't. We were too young and wanted different things. The breakup was actually pretty smooth considering we had a baby. We never got married, so there was no divorce or lawyers involved. We just agreed that we'd both be there for Tyler and figure it out as we went. For the first few years after the split, things were complicated because James moved 3 hours away for work. Tyler stayed with me full-time, and James would visit when he could, maybe twice a month. Then when Tyler was around 8 or 9, James moved back to our city. He had gotten a better job here, and also he'd started dating someone seriously. That's when we worked out a schedule where Tyler would spend half his time at each house. We never went to court for any of this. It was all just us talking and deciding what made sense. Tyler would go back and forth, staying with each of us for a week at a time. Every Friday, he'd switch houses. This worked fine for years. James got married to his girlfriend Rachel about 4 years ago. I'd met her a few times at Tyler's school events and she seemed fine at first. A bit cold maybe, but I figured she was just uncomfortable with the whole situation. I get it. It's probably weird having your husband's ex around, even if it's just for co-parenting stuff. I remarried too, about 3 years ago. My husband David is great with Tyler, and I also have a daughter Emma who's 11 from my marriage to David. So Tyler has a half-sister at our house. At James's house, Rachel and James have 2 little kids together. They have a 4-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. So Tyler has 2 young half-siblings over there. Rachel has always made it clear she doesn't like me. She never says it directly, but I can tell. She gives me these looks at school pickup or when I drop Tyler off. She's made comments before about how it's strange that James and I are still friendly. We're not even that friendly, honestly. We just text about Tyler's schedule and school stuff. We don't hang out or have long conversations. But Rachel acts like we're best friends or something, and she doesn't approve. Tyler started complaining about things at his dad's house maybe a year ago. At first, it was small stuff. He'd say Rachel was strict about chores or that she got annoyed easily. I didn't think much of it. 2 little kids under 5 is exhausting, and I figured Rachel was just stressed. Tyler is a teenager, and all teenagers complain about their parents being annoying. But over the past 6 months, the complaints got more specific and more frequent. Every time he came back to my house, he'd tell me something new. He said Rachel made him clean the entire downstairs of their house by himself every weekend. That included the living room, kitchen, and both bathrooms down there. He also said she made him watch his half-siblings constantly, not just for an hour here and there, but for long stretches of time. He'd have to watch them after school until James got home from work, which was usually around 6 or 7 p.m. On weekends, Rachel would leave him alone with both kids while she ran errands or just went to her room to rest. Tyler said one time last month he had to miss school because Rachel said the 2-year-old had a fever, and she needed help watching him. She told Tyler to stay home. When I found out about that, I was livid, but Tyler begged me not to call his dad because he didn't want to cause problems. Rachel also apparently had very different rules than I did. I've always tried to be understanding with Tyler. If he forgets to do something like take out the trash, I'll remind him and he'll do it. No big deal. But according to Tyler, if he forgot to do something at Rachel's house, she'd blow up at him. She'd yell that he was disrespectful and lazy. She told James that Tyler was spoiled and that James and I had raised him wrong. James apparently agreed with her, or at least he never disagreed when she said these things in front of Tyler. I talked to James about this a few times over the past few months. I'd text him and say, "Hey, Rachel seems really hard on Tyler. Can you maybe ask her to ease up a bit?" James would always respond the same way. He'd say Rachel was doing her best and that Tyler needed to learn responsibility. He'd say that I was too soft on Tyler and that's why he acted entitled at their house. I don't think Tyler is entitled. His teachers have never complained about his behavior. He gets good grades. He does his chores at my house. He's respectful to me and David and his little sister. But James and Rachel had decided he was this problem child, and I couldn't change their mind. I'll admit I should have pushed harder earlier. I should have made it clear to Tyler that he didn't have to keep going over there if he was miserable. But I kept thinking it would get better. I kept thinking Rachel would calm down once her kids got a little older and easier to manage. And Tyler never said he wanted to stop going. He'd complain, but then Friday would come and he'd pack his stuff and drive himself over to James's house. Tyler got his license a few months ago, and my parents gave him their old car. So now he drives himself back and forth, which at least means I don't have to see Rachel at handoffs. Looking back, I think Tyler kept going because he didn't want to hurt his dad. He said before that he feels bad for James because Rachel is so controlling. James works long hours, and when he's home, Rachel is always asking him to do stuff with the kids or fix things around the house. Tyler said his dad looks tired all the time. So I think Tyler felt like if he stopped coming over, it would be another thing James had to deal with. Tyler didn't want to disappoint him. 3 Fridays ago, everything changed. It was December 13th. That Thursday night, Tyler was at James's house. He had a big history test coming up the next day, so he'd been studying all evening. He was in his room going over notes, and apparently, He forgot to do the dishes after dinner. At James's house, Tyler is responsible for cleaning up after dinner every night. That night, he just spaced on it because he was focused on studying. Rachel noticed the dishes still in the sink around 9 p.m. She went upstairs and started yelling at Tyler. He tried to explain that he forgot because he was studying for a test, but she didn't care. She said he was making excuses and being lazy. James came into the room, and instead of calming things down, he joined in. He told Tyler he needed to stop talking back and just accept that he messed up. So now both of them were yelling at him. Tyler tried to defend himself. He said he wasn't trying to be disrespectful and he'd do the dishes right after he finished one more chapter. That's when Rachel walked over and slapped him across the face. She said he had no right to talk to her that way in her house. James was standing right there and he didn't say anything. He didn't tell Rachel not to hit Tyler. He just stood there. Tyler finished studying, did the dishes, and went to bed. The next morning, he got up and went to school. After school, instead of going back to James's house, he drove straight to mine. It was his Friday to come to my house anyway, so the timing worked out. When he got home, he looked off. His face wasn't red or anything, but he wasn't his usual self. He went up to his room and I followed him after a few minutes. I asked if everything was okay, and that's when he told me what happened. He said Rachel hit him and his dad just let it happen. He said he didn't want to go back there. I had to sit down. Couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked Tyler if he was sure, and he said yes. I asked if this had happened before, and he said no, but Rachel had threatened to hit him a few times in the past when she was yelling. I asked where James was when this happened, and Tyler said he was standing right next to Rachel. He saw the whole thing and didn't stop it. I didn't even think. I told Tyler to stay at the house and I got in my car. I drove over to James's house. I was trying to stay calm on the drive, but my hands were shaking. I kept thinking about how Rachel put her hands on my son. She has 2 kids of her own and she can discipline them however she wants. That's her choice. But Tyler is my child. She has no right to touch him like that. And James let it happen. That's what made it worse. If James had stopped it or at least talked to Tyler afterward and apologized, maybe I would have handled it differently, but he just stood there. I got to their house and knocked on the door. James opened it and I could see Rachel behind him in the living room. I walked in and said I needed to talk to both of them. Rachel immediately got defensive. She stood up and came toward me and said she didn't appreciate me barging into her home. I said I wasn't barging in. I was knocking on the door and James let me in. Then I said we needed to talk about what happened with Tyler. Rachel cut me off and said Tyler was being dramatic. She said he'd been disrespectful and lazy all week and she was sick of it. She said if I had raised him properly, she wouldn't have to deal with his attitude. I said she had no business putting her hands on him no matter what he did. She said he needed to learn respect, and I clearly wasn't teaching him that. James just stood there the whole time not saying anything. Finally, I looked at him and said, "You were there. You saw her hit him and you didn't stop it." He said Tyler was out of line and Rachel was right to discipline. I said discipline doesn't include hitting someone else's child. Rachel got in my face and said this was her house and Tyler needed to follow her rules. I said he's not coming back here if this is how you treat him. She said good. Maybe he'd learn something if he stayed with me full time. That's when Rachel started pushing me toward the door. She put her hands on my shoulders and tried to shove me out. I pushed her hands off me and she did it again. I didn't plan what happened next. I just reacted. I swung my hand and slapped her across the face. Then I said, "How do you like it when someone hits you?" She stood there looking shocked, and James finally moved. He stepped between us and told me to leave. I said, "Fine, I'm leaving, and your son isn't coming back here." Then I walked out. I sat in my car for a few minutes before driving home. My hand was stinging, and I couldn't believe I'd actually hit her. I'm not a violent person. I've never hit anyone before. But in that moment, I wanted her to know what it felt like. I wanted her to understand that you can't just hit people when you're upset with them. When I got home, David was in the kitchen with Tyler and Emma. I told David what happened, and he didn't say much. Tyler asked if I was okay, and I said yes. I didn't tell him I hit Rachel. I just said I talked to his dad and Rachel and things got heated. The next day I called James. I told him I was sorry for making a scene in his house. I said I shouldn't have come over like that and I shouldn't have hit Rachel in front of her kids. I was worried her 4-year-old might have seen it. James said the kids were upstairs, but Rachel was upset. He said I had no right to come into their house and assault his wife. I said she hit Tyler first and I was defending. He said that's not the same thing because Rachel was disciplining Tyler and I attacked Rachel out of anger. I said I'd be willing to apologize to Rachel directly if she apologized to Tyler for hitting him. James said he'd talk to Rachel about it. He called me back an hour later and said Rachel refused to apologize. She said Tyler needed to learn respect and she didn't owe him an apology for teaching him a lesson. She said she didn't need to explain herself to a child. James said Rachel wanted me to apologize first and then maybe she'd consider talking to Tyler. I said no. I said if she won't admit she was wrong, then I'm not apologizing either. James said this was going to be a problem. I said Tyler is staying with me for another week while we figure this out. James said fine and hung up. Update 1. I wasn't planning to post an update so soon, but things have gotten complicated. After my last post, Tyler stayed at my house for an extra week, like I said. James kept texting, asking when Tyler was coming back, and I kept saying I didn't know. Tyler made it clear he didn't want to go back to James's house, and I wasn't going to force him. I told James that Tyler could see him anytime he wanted, just not at the house with Rachel there. James didn't like that idea. He said if Tyler wanted to see him, then Tyler needed to come to the house. I said that wasn't going to work. On Sunday morning, 8 days after the incident, Rachel showed up at my house. It was around 10 a.m. and I was making breakfast. David answered the door and came to get me. When I went to the front door, Rachel was standing there looking terrible. Her eyes were red and puffy like she'd been crying. She asked if she could come in and talk. I said fine, and we sat in the living room. David stayed in the kitchen, but I could tell he was listening. Rachel started by saying there'd been a misunderstanding. She said she didn't mean to hit Tyler so hard and things had gotten out of control that night. She said she'd been under a lot of stress. James works late most nights, and she's home alone with 2 little kids. The 2-year-old barely sleeps, and the 4-year-old is going through a difficult phase. She said she asked Tyler to help around the house because she needed the help. She said she couldn't do everything by herself. Then she started crying. She said she had postpartum depression after her son was born, and she never really recovered from it. She said she knows she's been harder on Tyler than she should be, but everything feels overwhelming right now. I sat there not knowing what to say. Part of me felt bad for her. Having 2 kids under 5 is hard, and if she's dealing with postpartum depression on top of that, I can understand why she'd be stressed, but that still doesn't make it okay to hit Tyler. I told her I was sorry she was struggling, but that didn't give her the right to put her hands on my son. She nodded and said she knew that. She said she wanted to apologize to Tyler. I said he was still asleep and she could talk to him later when he was ready. Then Rachel said something that bothered me. She said she was sorry for taking discipline into her own hands and next time she'd just tell James to handle it. She said it like she was doing me a favor. Like the problem was that she disciplined Tyler instead of James doing it. Not that Tyler got hit at all. I said there shouldn't be any hitting, period. She said she understood, but she didn't sound like she meant it. Then she asked when Tyler would be coming back to the house. I said I didn't know. She said James was upset and the kids kept asking where Tyler was. I said Tyler could visit any time, but he wasn't staying over until things changed. Rachel's face changed. She looked angry. She said I was keeping Tyler away from his father, and that wasn't fair. I said I wasn't keeping Tyler from anyone. He just didn't want to be at that house right now. She left after that. After Rachel left, I woke Tyler up and told him she'd come by. He asked what she wanted, and I explained that she said she was sorry and wanted to talk. Tyler said he didn't want to talk to her. I said that was fine, and he didn't have to do anything he didn't want to do. Then I told him something I should have told him months ago. I said he didn't have to keep going to his dad's house if he didn't want to. I said he could have a relationship with James without living there part-time. Tyler looked relieved when I said that. He asked if his dad would be mad, and I said his dad would get over it. David came in and sat with us. He told Tyler that no one had the right to hit him, and his feelings about not wanting to go back were completely valid. Tyler said he still wanted to see his dad, but he didn't want to deal with Rachel, and he definitely didn't want to watch the little kids anymore. I texted James later that day and said Tyler didn't want to come back to the house, but he'd be happy to meet up with James other places. James said that was ridiculous. He said Tyler was being manipulative, and I was encouraging it. He said I was trying to turn Tyler against him. I said I wasn't turning Tyler against anyone. Tyler made his own decision, and I was respecting it. James said if Tyler didn't come back by Friday, he was going to have a problem with it. I said Tyler wasn't coming back, and James needed to accept that. He didn't respond after that. The next few days were quiet. Tyler went to school and came home. He seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. He spent more time downstairs with the rest of us instead of hiding in his room. He helped Emma with her homework a few times without me even asking. David noticed it too. On Wednesday night, Tyler asked if he could have some friends over on the weekend, and I said yes. It was the first time in months he'd wanted to invite people to the house. Thursday night, James called instead of texting. He said he wanted to talk on the phone because texting wasn't working. I said okay and went out to the back porch so Tyler wouldn't hear. James said he and Rachel had talked and they agreed that they'd been too hard on Tyler. He said Rachel was sorry and she wanted another chance. I said that was between Rachel and Tyler, but Tyler had already made it clear he didn't want to go back. James said I was poisoning Tyler against his stepmother. I said I hadn't said anything bad about Rachel to Tyler. James said, then why would Tyler suddenly not want to come over anymore? I said, because Rachel hit him, and he doesn't feel safe there. James got quiet. Then he said Rachel explained what happened, and it wasn't as bad as Tyler made it sound. He said it was barely a slap. More like a tap to get Tyler's attention. I said Tyler said she slapped him across the face hard enough that he felt it. James said Tyler was exaggerating because he's a teenager and teenagers are dramatic. I said I believed Tyler. James said of course I believed Tyler because I wanted to make Rachel look bad. That's when I got frustrated. I said this had nothing to do with making anyone look bad. This was about keeping Tyler safe and comfortable. James said Tyler was safe at his house and I was being overdramatic. I said if Tyler felt safe there, he'd be willing to come back and he wasn't. We went in circles for a while before I finally said I had to go. Friday came and went and Tyler stayed at my house. James sent me several texts asking if Tyler was coming over and I didn't respond. Tyler spent the weekend at home. On Saturday, his dad texted him directly asking to meet for lunch. Tyler said yes, and they met at a restaurant near James's work. When Tyler came home, I asked how it went. He said it was fine, but his dad spent the whole time trying to convince him to come back to the house. Tyler told him no. He said James got upset and said Tyler was abandoning his little siblings. Tyler said that wasn't fair because he never asked to be responsible for them in the first place. According to Tyler, James said that's what family does. They help each other. Tyler said he'd help out sometimes, but he wasn't going to be a live-in babysitter anymore. James apparently didn't have much to say after that. Sunday night, James called me again. This time he was angry. He said I'd turned Tyler against him and against Rachel. He said Tyler used to be a good kid, but now he was disrespectful and selfish. I said Tyler was the same kid he'd always been. He just wasn't putting up with being treated poorly anymore. James said Tyler wasn't being treated poorly. I said making a 15-year-old watch 2 toddlers for hours every day and clean an entire floor of the house by himself is treating him poorly. James said plenty of kids have chores and babysit their siblings. I said babysitting occasionally is normal, but what Rachel was expecting was too much. James said I was making excuses for Tyler's laziness. That's when I realized James wasn't going to see my side of this. He was completely on Rachel's side. In his mind, Tyler was the problem and I was enabling bad behavior. There was no point in continuing the conversation. I told James that Tyler would stay with me for the foreseeable future, and if James wanted to see him, they could meet outside the house. James said he wasn't going to beg Tyler to spend time with him. He said if Tyler wanted to act like he didn't have a father, then fine. Then he hung up. I stood there holding my phone thinking about how quickly things had fallen apart. A month ago, we had a custody arrangement that worked. Now Tyler didn't want to go to his dad's house, and James was acting like Tyler was the one being unreasonable. Update 2. It's been about a month since Tyler stopped going to James's house. Things have been better at home, but the situation with James has gotten worse. Tyler has seen his dad 3 times in the past month. Each time they've met somewhere neutral like a restaurant or the park. James keeps asking Tyler when he's coming back to the house, and Tyler keeps saying he's not. After the 3rd meetup, Tyler came home and said he didn't want to see his dad for a while. He said every conversation was the same, and it was exhausting. I asked Tyler what James was saying, and he told me his dad keeps bringing up the same points. James says Tyler is letting Rachel down. He says the little kids miss Tyler. He says Tyler is being selfish by not helping the family. Tyler said he tried to explain that he didn't mind visiting or even watching the kids occasionally, but he wasn't going to live there and be responsible for them all the time. James apparently said that Tyler had responsibilities whether he liked it or not. Tyler asked what responsibilities, and James said responsibilities to the family. Tyler said it's not his family. It's James and Rachel's family. According to Tyler, that's when James got really upset and said Tyler was part of the family, whether he wanted to be or not. I felt bad for Tyler after he told me all this. He looked worn down from having the same argument over and over. I told him he didn't have to keep meeting up with his dad if he didn't want to. Tyler said he wanted to have a relationship with James, but not like this. I said maybe some space would help, and James would come around eventually. Tyler said maybe. About a week after that conversation, James texted me saying we needed to talk about making things official. I wasn't sure what he meant, so I called him. He said since Tyler wasn't coming back to his house, we needed to go to court and get a formal custody arrangement. I said I didn't think that was necessary. We'd been doing this informally for years, and it had worked fine. James said it obviously wasn't working fine anymore. He said if we had a court order, then Tyler would have to follow it. I said you can't force a 15-year-old to go somewhere he doesn't want to go. James said yes, you can. That's what court orders are for. I told James that getting lawyers involved would make everything worse. I said Tyler didn't want to go to court and have a judge ask him questions about who he wanted to live with. James said too bad. He said if Tyler wasn't going to come to the house willingly, then we'd let the court decide. I said Tyler had already decided, and we should respect that. James said I'd manipulated Tyler into making that decision. I said I hadn't manipulated anyone. James said then, why would Tyler suddenly not want to see his own father? I said Tyler wanted to see him, just not at the house with Rachel. James said that wasn't good enough. We went back and forth for a while before James finally said he'd already talked to a lawyer. He said the lawyer told him he had a strong case because we'd had a 50-50 arrangement for years, and I was suddenly refusing to honor it. I said I wasn't refusing anything. Tyler was refusing because he didn't feel comfortable at James's house anymore. James said the lawyer said it didn't matter what Tyler wanted. I said Tyler is 15, not 5, and his opinion should matter. James said not legally it doesn't. Then he said he'd be filing for a formal custody arrangement by the end of the week, and I should get a lawyer too. After that call, I sat down with David and explained what was happening. David said James was bluffing. He said no judge would force a 15-year-old to live somewhere he didn't want to live, especially when there were allegations of physical discipline. I said we didn't have any proof of what happened. It was Tyler's word against Rachel's and James's. David said Tyler could tell the judge what happened. I said I didn't want to put Tyler through that. David said we might not have a choice. I talked to Tyler that night and told him his dad was talking about going to court. Tyler looked panicked. He said he didn't want to go to court. He said he didn't want to have to stand in front of a judge and talk about his dad and Rachel. I said I didn't want that either, but his dad was pushing for it. Tyler asked if he'd have to go back to James's house if a judge said so. I said I didn't know. I said we'd figure it out, but he needed to know what was happening. Tyler went quiet after that. He went up to his room and didn't come down for dinner. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail from a lawyer's office. It was a formal notice that James was filing for a custody modification. The letter said James was requesting that the court establish a formal custody schedule and enforce it. It said I needed to respond within 30 days. I sat on the couch reading the letter over and over. David came home from work and found me sitting there. He read the letter and said we needed to get a lawyer too. I said I didn't want to do this. He said we didn't have a choice now. I asked around and got the name of a family lawyer from a friend. I called and made an appointment for the following week. When I met with the lawyer, she asked me to explain the whole situation from the beginning. I told her about Tyler and James's history, the custody arrangement we'd had, the issues with Rachel, and the incident where Rachel hit Tyler. The lawyer took notes and asked questions. When I finished, she said James probably didn't have a strong case. She said given Tyler's age and the allegations of physical discipline, a judge would likely take Tyler's wishes into account. But she also said we'd need Tyler to be willing to testify about what happened. I said I'd talk to him. That night, I sat down with Tyler again. I explained that the lawyer said we had a good case, but Tyler would need to tell the judge what happened with Rachel. Tyler said he didn't want to do that. He said it would make things worse with his dad. I said things were already bad with his dad, and this might be the only way to make sure Tyler didn't have to go back to that house. Tyler said he'd think about it. A few days later, Tyler came to me and said he'd do it. He said if testifying meant he didn't have to live at James's house anymore, then it was worth it. I said okay and called the lawyer back to let her know. She said she'd start preparing our case. Over the next 2 weeks, the lawyer asked for documentation of everything. She wanted text messages between me and James, Tyler's school records, anything that showed Tyler was doing fine at my house. She also wanted a written statement from Tyler describing what had happened with Rachel and what his living situation at James's house had been like. Tyler wrote the statement, and it was hard to read. He described in detail how Rachel would make him watch the kids for hours, how she'd yell at him over small things, and how she'd slapped him that night. He also wrote about how James hadn't stood up for him and had taken Rachel's side. The lawyer submitted everything to the court, and we got a court date for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, James was still texting me asking about Tyler. He'd ask if Tyler wanted to meet up, and I'd ask Tyler. Sometimes Tyler said yes. Sometimes he said no. When they did meet up, it was always the same. James would try to convince Tyler to come back, and Tyler would say no. Then James would get frustrated, and the visit would end on a bad note. 3 weeks before the court date, Rachel called. I almost didn't answer, but I was curious what she wanted. She said she'd heard about the court case, and she wanted to talk. I said, okay. She said she wanted to apologize to Tyler properly. She said she'd handled things badly, and she wanted to make it right. I said Tyler didn't want to talk to her. Rachel said she understood, but she wanted me to know that she'd been going to counseling. She said she was working on her postpartum depression and learning better ways to handle stress. I said that was good, but it didn't change anything. Rachel said she knew she couldn't undo what she'd done, but she wanted another chance. I said that was up to Tyler, not me. After we hung up, I told Tyler about the call. He said he didn't care if Rachel was getting help. He said she should have gotten help before she hit him. I said that was fair. Tyler asked if he still had to go to court, and I said yes. He said, okay. Update 3. We went to court last week. The whole process was worse than I expected. We had to sit in a waiting room for over an hour before we were called in. James was there with his lawyer, and he didn't look at me or Tyler the whole time. When we finally got into the courtroom, the judge asked both lawyers to present their cases. James's lawyer went first. He argued that Tyler and James had a long-established custody arrangement and that I was interfering with James's parental rights. He said Tyler was a teenager going through a rebellious phase, and teenagers shouldn't be allowed to make decisions about custody. He said if the court allowed Tyler to refuse visitation, it would set a bad precedent. Then my lawyer presented our case. She talked about how Tyler had been used as a babysitter and made to do excessive housework at James's house. She submitted Tyler's written statement describing everything that had happened. She also brought up the incident where Rachel had hit Tyler. James's lawyer objected and said there was no proof that happened. My lawyer said Tyler was willing to testify. The judge said he wanted to hear from Tyler directly. Tyler had to go up to the witness stand. The judge asked him questions about why he didn't want to go to his dad's house anymore. Tyler explained about the chores and the babysitting. He explained about how Rachel treated him and how his dad never stood up for him. Then the judge asked about the slapping incident. Tyler described what happened that night. He said Rachel slapped him across the face because he forgot to do the dishes. The judge asked if anyone else saw it happen, and Tyler said yes. His dad was standing right there. The judge looked at James and asked if that was true. James said Tyler was exaggerating. He said Rachel had tapped Tyler on the shoulder to get his attention, and Tyler was making it sound worse than it was. The judge asked Tyler if it was a tap on the shoulder or a slap to the face. Tyler said it was a slap to the face. The judge asked if it left a mark, and Tyler said no, but it hurt. The judge asked Tyler what he wanted. Tyler said he wanted to keep living with me full time, but he was willing to see his dad outside of James's house. The judge asked why Tyler didn't want to go to the house, and Tyler said because he didn't want to be around Rachel. The judge asked if Tyler would be willing to visit if Rachel wasn't there, and Tyler said maybe, but he didn't think that was realistic. After Tyler testified, the judge asked both lawyers if they had anything else to add. James's lawyer said Tyler was being influenced by me and couldn't make objective decisions about what was best for him. My lawyer said Tyler was 15 years old and mature enough to have input on where he lived. The judge said he'd make a decision and we'd hear back in a few days. We got the decision 3 days later. The judge ruled in our favor. He said given Tyler's age and the circumstances described, Tyler would have primary residence with me. James was granted visitation rights, but the judge noted that Tyler wasn't required to visit if he felt unsafe or uncomfortable. The judge also ordered that James and Rachel attend family counseling if they wanted to work toward rebuilding their relationship with Tyler. The judge said Tyler's wishes would be taken into consideration, and the custody arrangement would be revisited when Tyler turned 18. I called Tyler into the living room and showed him the decision. He read it and then nodded. He didn't seem happy or relieved. He just seemed tired. I asked if he wanted to call his dad and tell him, and Tyler said no. I texted James and let him know the decision had come through. He responded with one word: fine. Tyler hasn't seen James since the court date. James hasn't reached out to schedule any visit. I asked Tyler if he wanted me to reach out on his behalf, and he said no. He said if his dad wanted to see him, his dad knew how to contact him. So now we're just in this weird limbo. Tyler lives here full time. He goes to school and hangs out with his friends and does his homework. He seems okay most of the time, but sometimes I catch him staring at his phone like he's waiting for a message. David and I signed Tyler up for a youth group at the community center. We thought it might be good for him to be around other kids and have something to do outside of school. Tyler went to the first meeting last week and said it was fine. He's going back this week. Emma has been good about giving Tyler space, but also including him in things. Last weekend, she asked if he wanted to watch a movie with her, and he said yes. They sat on the couch and watched some animated movie, and I could hear them laughing from the kitchen. I got a text from Rachel 2 weeks ago. She said she was sorry for everything and she hoped Tyler was doing okay. She said she understood if he didn't want to have a relationship with her, but she wanted him to know the door was always open. I didn't respond. I figured if she really wanted to say that to Tyler, she could say it to him directly. She hasn't tried to contact him as far as I know. James hasn't paid child support yet this month. We never had a formal agreement about money before because we split everything 50-50. Now that Tyler is with me full time, the judge ordered James to pay monthly support. The first payment was due last week and it hasn't come through. I'm not sure if he forgot or if he's refusing to pay. I haven't texted him about it yet because I don't want to start another fight. My lawyer said if he doesn't pay by the end of the month, we can file a contempt motion. I hope it doesn't come to that, but I'm not holding my breath. Tyler asked me yesterday if I thought his dad would ever come around. I said I didn't know. I said his dad was hurt and probably needed time. Tyler said he was hurt too, and his dad didn't seem to care about that. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just gave him a hug. Tyler said he was glad he didn't have to go back to that house, but he missed having a dad. I told him he still had a dad, but sometimes parents mess up and don't know how to fix it. Tyler said that was a nice way of saying his dad chose Rachel over him. I said I didn't think it was that simple, but Tyler just shrugged. So that's where things are now. Tyler is safe, and he's with me, and that's what matters. But I can't help thinking about how different things could have been if James had just stood up for his son, if he'd told Rachel she was being too hard on Tyler, if he'd stopped her from hitting him, if he'd chosen Tyler over keeping the peace with his wife. But he didn't do any of those things. And now Tyler doesn't have a relationship with his dad. I don't know if they'll ever fix it. I hope they do, but I'm not counting on it. For now, I'm just focusing on making sure Tyler knows he's loved and supported here. That's all I can do.